Up next, Dr. Robin Felkov and Richard C. Hoagland on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie, live in the studios of KKOB in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'll tell you a little bit more about this trip in just a moment. In the studios here, of course, they live in Albuquerque, so this was easy for them. Robin Felkov, doctor, and Richard C. Hoagland. Hello, you two.
Good evening, George.
Hi, George.
Welcome to Albuquerque.
Oh, thank you. We're in your neck of the woods now.
Just down the street.
And here you are. Richard, you look dapper, by the way, and
So
congratulations on the Sci-Fi 2012 special. I thought you did an incredible job.
Well, if you shoot enough film, it's like the 100th Monkey thing. Actually, they did a very good job of editing. This was done in New York. Rebecca Ratliff, who was the producer, who was thrown into the lion's den because she was not really programmed to do any of this, and she rose to the occasion, and she gave everyone an even shot. We all got to say our piece. They edited it so it was actually coherent, and the only peculiar thing is that they are not giving us any numbers now. Now, you can go to the web.
I can get you numbers.
You and I...
It was a successful show.
Oh, it's
I want
huge.
you to know
It was
that.
huge, yeah. But the people at Sci-Fi, the customer, the vice presidents that we talked to, and Rob and I went to New York in 2007 and began this process, they promised me they would talk to me about the numbers as soon as we knew. So I called this guy's secretary, a couple of days later, and I said,
where are they?
Where are the numbers? And she says, oh, he wants to talk to you. That was days ago.
Maybe they were so good, they're afraid to tell you.
I have another theory.
Well, you hold it for next hour, because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this incredible lacrosse mission again.
Have we got news about the moon tonight?
Kicked up 25 gallons of water.
Yeah, but that's out of something the size of the studio.
Yeah, in just a little small area.
A tiny area.
So we'll talk about that. And, of course, Robin Felkov's with us, and I wanted Robin to join us tonight because she, too, lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she is an alternative medicine practitioner. She was also in the sci-fi thing, but we'll talk about how that synchronicity occurred. Why are you opposed to vaccines?
Oh, my gosh.
You know I am.
Yes, I know you are, and
I am.
The evidence is quite strong, and one of the guests that we had on the show that I put together for you, George, Dr. Andrew Molden.
Yes.
I feel that he has the irrefutable proof. He just came back from a tour in Portugal, and Andrew has images pre- and post-vaccination where he is able to show the difference in the positioning of pupils, small expression lines, the face is no longer symmetrical. And how he explains this is that when you are given the vaccine, the toxicity of the injection causes a massive blood flow to get to the area to deal with that toxic substance. And that blood flow that moves so quickly blocks the other blood flow and causes microstrokes. Little tiny microstrokes that are reflected visually when you... If you look at this, no one can deny what he is showing. It's amazing.
Robin, the CDC is now saying, they started by saying 1,000 Americans have died from the swine flu since April. Now they're saying 3,900. And not one major media outlet has pointed out, other than our program, that the normal flu causes 30 to 36,000 deaths a year. And if you do this on a run rate, we have had 18,000 people die then if we use the same formula from the normal flu as opposed to 4,000 from the swine flu. Yet they make the 4,000 deaths, of which all of them are sad and tragic. But they make them sound like it's the end of the world and it's multiplying and people are dying. But the major media doesn't point out the fact that the normal flu beats it by far. Why?
Definitely. Because what has taken place here, we have a snowball. We have a whole campaign where the patent was applied for 2 years ago for this particular vaccine. And
before we even knew about this one?
Yes, before.
Well, how did they do that? They have remote viewers working at the pharmaceutical companies.
That what Ed Danes has been
I was going to
doing.
say, it's moonlighting.
But
it might be.
I was just watching a report from Poland with an investigative journalist going and talking about the Baxter contamination. When you understand what takes place in one of these laboratories with these controlled, dangerous substances that have to go through security clearances to be brought into the laboratory, the idea that they can accidentally contaminate a batch of vaccine that goes out to, I think it's 18 kilos that went out to different countries, and fortunately the Czechs had ferrets, and they were very thorough, much more thorough than our country, and they tested the vaccine batch on these ferrets who have a respiratory system similar to humans, and they died.
Ugh.
And gosh, okay, they died. Well, maybe there's something wrong with this vaccine. We better pull it and see what's going on.
You know, Robin, listening to this program, I will not tell someone to get a vaccine, and I will tell them, not to. It's their business. What they're supposed to do is go out and do the research, listen to us, and take it or leave it and make a decision. Because, I don't want that on my chest or shoulders or whatever I carry things on. I don't want that. And we have had experts on. Dr. Dean Adele swears by vaccines. He's been on the program before. But we've had a lot of other people, yourself included, that just don't want people to get the vaccine. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny is another one. The experts you brought us several months ago. There are others not to get the vaccine. Do you trust Big Pharma at all? At all?
No, not
No, there
at
must be some drugs that work for people. Blood pressure pills and things, right?
Well, there are big problems with pharmaceutical drugs because the majority of pharmaceutical drugs, more than 50%, don't have a therapeutic effect as they are purported to have. And you have recommendations for a milligram amount for people that are 80 years old and 30 years old, and a lot of times they're given the same thing, and their bodies just don't metabolize things the same. All it takes for the FDA to approve a new drug is that they show it's effective. That means having an effect. Not better than something that's out there, just that it has an effect. This is no criteria. And then all of the reports that have come out about lying in the investigative trials, misrepresentation. I have books about this. My dog died from a combination of different drugs last year that I go back and research. They were known in the 1990s that these are toxic drugs for anybody with liver disease. They can kill you.
Last week I gave you an assignment, and that was to investigate elderberry when a caller called coast to coast and said, this kills the flu virus. What have you found out?
Elderberry is very effective. Back in 1980, you had Dr. Miriam, let me get her name properly, Shuglu, who was an Israeli researcher.
How'd you like to say that name every night?
That would be a challenge. And
See, I have to do that every night. But, I figure nobody knows who they are, so I just throw out the name, whatever I want. That's who they become. But elderberry.
Yes, it has a history for 2,500 years, which I always find interesting, being a doctor of Oriental medicine as well, knowing that the Chinese have a written history for over 4,000 years. And for 2,500 years, folk medicine has used elderberry. They've used it for flus, for colds, for aches and pains, and bringing down temperatures, stabilizing the system. And they've used it very efficiently. And the double-blind studies that were done were shown that when it's given at the first onset of symptoms, which are the same recommendations for the homeopathic oscillococcinum, which works, it's like magic.
How do you know how to get the right herbal supplement? Because they're not as regulated, so-called, as the pharmaceutical industry. How do you know you're not buying junk?
What you get in the health food stores, you have to go with companies that have a reputation, that you know they have quality products.
Good.
What I use as a doctor of Oriental medicine, those companies do very sophisticated laboratory analysis to make sure that those levels of the particular herbs are active and present in the formulas. So there is a lot of very
Because you could get the wrong stuff from the wrong company, right?
The wrong stuff, the wrong amount, something that's inactive. So you do have to be careful, and you do need to check very carefully. There is nothing that is 100% safe for anybody.
What is going on in the world specifically?